People think I cheated because I got bored, that I wrecked our shared life over some cheap thrill, and now they're celebrating how my ex got his revenge by selling the house from under me. What they don't know, what I've never told anyone except my court-mandated therapist, is that I slept with Mark while David and I were signing the mortgage papers, and even that wasn't the real betrayal. The real sin was signing my name next to David's on a stack of documents I didn't read, trusting him when he said everything was standard, that we were finally building equity together. Now I'm 33, living in a sublet that smells like cat pee, and every mutual acquaintance treats me like I set fire to an orphanage. They post that viral video of David's gotcha moment, him handing me the packed boxes on what I thought was a normal Tuesday, with captions about karma. But none of them know about the quitclaim deed hidden in his office safe, or why I was desperate enough to fall into bed with his former business partner. The full story starts with a signature I should have treated like a marriage vow, and ends with a wedding invitation I received yesterday that finally made me need to say all of this out loud. The spring we bought the place on Cedar Street felt like a victory lap we hadn't earned yet. David and I had been together since my senior year of college, surviving his startup's near-death experiences and my string of dead-end marketing jobs. When his app finally got Series A funding, he insisted we celebrate by investing in our future, which meant house hunting in neighborhoods where the coffee shops had oat milk and the mailboxes were architectural statements. I was riding high on the fantasy of being the kind of couple who hosts dinner parties, who fights about paint swatches, whose biggest problem is whose turn it is to clean the gutters. My mother, a woman who views optimism as a character flaw, asked me point-blank at brunch if I'd actually read the closing documents. I laughed and told her David's lawyer had everything handled, that I didn't need to micromanage every comma. That was my first lie, the one that made the others easier. At the closing table, David's knee bounced under the mahogany while I initialed page after page, trusting the notary's smile more than my own instincts. He'd been weirdly possessive about the paperwork, snapping at me when I asked to see the inspection report again. "Babe, you're overthinking this," he'd said, sliding another document toward me. "Sign here, here, and here. We have a moving truck booked for tomorrow." The lawyer, a friend of David's from his frat days, didn't make eye contact with me once. I should have seen the way his pen hovered over the deed, how he angled the paper so I couldn't read the heading. Instead, I signed where David pointed, my signature a blind promise on a document that would erase me. The jewelry store receipt fell out of David's gym bag 2 weeks later, tucked inside a protein powder pocket he never checked. $10,000 for a diamond ring, size 5.5. I wear a 7. The date stamped was 10 days after our closing, which meant he'd bought someone else's ring while I was unpacking our joint kitchen. My hands shook as I smoothed the thermal paper, reading it 3 times like the numbers might rearrange themselves into something innocuous. I told myself it was probably a client gift, something corporate and impersonal, even as my stomach dropped through the floorboards. That night, I made twice the mortgage payment from our joint account, feeling somehow that buying my way into legitimacy would make that receipt disappear. David never mentioned the extra money, just kissed my forehead, and said I was being such a team player. 3 months in, I was hemorrhaging cash into a house that didn't feel like mine. David had stopped asking before he spent money on household upgrades, a smart fridge that required a subscription, a security system with cameras that only sent alerts to his phone. When I brought up the budget, he'd sigh and say, "If you want to manage the finances, be my guest, but don't come crying when you miss a payment." I wasn't qualified, he implied, with my liberal arts degree and my creative approach to Excel. My best friend Jenna noticed I'd worn the same 3 outfits to work for a month and asked if David was making me pay for everything. I defended him so fiercely she flinched. "He's building us a life," I snapped, clutching my coffee like a shield. Not everyone can understand ambition. The truth about David's company came out during a mandatory happy hour with Mark, who'd been forced out 6 months before the house purchase. We ended up at the same bar, him nursing a scotch, me drinking wine I couldn't afford. "You know that funding round was mostly debt, right?" Mark said, watching my reflection in the mirror behind the bottles. "David leveraged everything. Your credit was probably the only clean thing on that application." The words landed like a diagnosis. I asked what he meant, and Mark pulled up public records on his phone, liens against David's business, 3 lawsuits from vendors, a personal guarantee that put everything on the line. The house, he suggested gently, might have been David's way of tying me to his sinking ship. I met Mark 3 more times after that, always during David's late meetings, always with the excuse that I was researching ways to help. The last time, I'd had 2 martinis and Mark's hand was on my knee, his voice low and certain. David's been using you since the day you moved in together. I knew I should pull away, but the validation felt like oxygen after months of holding my breath. When David found the texts, innocent mostly, but with enough deleted gaps to look damning, he didn't yell. He just looked at me with the same expression he'd given the notary at closing, like I was a document to be handled, not a person. Planning a surprise party? He asked, voice flat, holding my phone with the birthday lie I'd texted Mark. How thoughtful. The credit score notification hit my inbox on a Tuesday. 80 points dropped because of inquiries from lenders I'd never contacted. David had been using my social security number, my clean financial history, to apply for business loans in both our names. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. We're married in every way that matters, he said, pouring bourbon like we were discussing the weather. What's yours is mine, remember. We weren't actually married, I reminded him, and he laughed. Exactly. That night I created a fake email account using his assistant's name and accessed the mortgage portal. The login worked on the first try. He'd used the same password for everything, including our Netflix account. The deed was right there, a PDF I'd never been shown. David Thomas, sole owner. Quitclaim deed executed the day after closing. My signature forged at the bottom in a handwriting that wasn't mine but looked close enough. At the office, I was the same competent marketing director who could pitch campaigns to C-suite executives. But at home, I became someone who checked David's location 30 times a day and cried in the shower so the water would hide the sound. My mother called offering to look at my finances, saying she had a bad feeling. I told her I was fine, that David was just going through a rough patch. The lie tasted metallic, like blood from biting my cheek. I was protecting him, I told myself, from what he'd done to me. The mental gymnastics required to hold both truths, that he was destroying me and that I owed him silence, should have qualified me for the Olympics. The confrontation happened in the kitchen, where all our worst moments seemed to land. I asked about the quitclaim, waving a printed screenshot because I still thought evidence mattered. David set down his coffee mug, the one I'd bought him on our first vacation, and said it was easier to get approved with just my name. You wouldn't understand the financing. When I asked why he didn't tell me, he sighed like I was a child, because you'd react exactly like this. Emotional, irrational. I was protecting you from yourself. The gaslight was so bright I almost believed him, until I remembered I'd paid the down payment, the inspections, the closing costs, all from my account, all documented in emails he'd sent me with the subject line our investment. Jenna stopped answering my texts after I accused her of being jealous of my relationship. I'd lashed out when she suggested David was isolating me financially, calling her a bitch who'd never understood partnership. The words left my mouth like projectile vomit, and I couldn't take them back. She'd been my emergency contact since college, and now she was gone because I'd chosen the man who'd stolen from me over the friend who'd held my hair during actual hangovers. I drank an entire bottle of wine that night and texted David's mother, asking if we could talk. She responded 2 days later, I think it's best you focus on your own family now, dear. David needs support, not more stress. David's mother was the one who told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving, that my suspicions were causing David's ulcers. She used air quotes when she said you're half of the mortgage, which told me David had been feeding her the same story about my financial incompetence. I didn't fight it. I just kept paying, kept signing over my paychecks, kept believing that if I could prove my worth, he'd add me to the deed. The delusion was so complete that when I found the condom wrapper in his suitcase, Magnum, not our brand, I told myself it was from before we met, somehow trapped in the zipper for 5 years. When David asked if I was happy, we were sitting in the living room I'd decorated, surrounded by furniture I'd paid for, in a house that legally belonged only to him. I looked at the man I'd loved since I was 21, saw the tiredness around his eyes, the way his fingers drummed on the armrest like he was already elsewhere. Of course I'm happy, I said, my voice a stranger's. We're building something. He nodded, satisfied, and I knew he was already planning his exit. The dramatic irony was almost funny. I was lying to protect the person who was destroying me, while he was telling the truth about his unhappiness to the woman he was leaving me for. I found her name in his phone when he left it unlocked on the counter. Sarah from work, with a contact photo that was definitely not professional, taken in our bedroom if the paint color was any indication. The texts were what you'd expect: meetings that ran late, lunches that lasted hours, complaints about a wife who didn't exist. What made me sit down hard on the tile was the date of their first message 6 weeks before the house closing. He'd been sleeping with her while I was signing away my financial future, while he was telling me this house was our fresh start. The timeline reframed every moment since. His rush to close, his nervousness at the table, the quitclaim deed, they weren't signs of his insecurity about commitment. They were the calculated moves of a man building a lifeboat for one. The full confession I've been avoiding starts here. Mark didn't just offer financial advice. After the third meeting, after I'd cried into my third glass of wine about the forged deed, he'd driven me home and idled in the driveway, his hand on my back in a way that started as comfort and became something else. I didn't stop him. I let him kiss me in the dark front seat, let him unbutton my coat, let myself feel wanted by someone who knew the truth. It lasted 3 weeks, these fumbling encounters in his apartment, always with the unspoken agreement that he was helping me. He wasn't. He'd been recording us since the first time, gathering ammunition for a lawsuit against David that would never materialize because David was already gone. The recording Mark sent me last month was timestamped for the night I told him about the jewelry receipt. His voice was clear. Tell me again about the house, Maya. Who really owns it? Mine was slurred, desperate. He does. It's all his. I'm just paying rent and calling it love. The worst part wasn't the sex captured on his laptop camera. It was hearing myself admit what I already knew, what I'd refused to see. Mark had never wanted to help me. He wanted to humiliate David, and I was the convenient weapon. The irony that I'd been weaponized twice, first by David's financial fraud, then by Mark's revenge porn scheme, would have been darkly funny if it hadn't left me with legal bills I couldn't pay and a reputation as the cheater who got what she deserved. David's attorney's letter came by certified mail, which felt unnecessarily theatrical. I had 30 days to vacate the premises, remove my belongings, and cease all claims to a property that had never been mine. The letter referenced the quitclaim deed, my voluntary transfer of interest, and noted that my monthly payments would be considered rent for the duration of my tenancy. I sat on the floor of my empty bedroom, the one I'd painted sage green because David said it was calming, and realized he'd been collecting rent from me for 8 months while planning his exit with Sarah. The mortgage payment I'd been making was $300 more than the actual mortgage. He'd been profiting off my guilt. The credit card statements were the final blow. 14 accounts opened in my name with balances totaling $60,000. David had used my clean credit, my social security number, my trust, to fund his new life before he'd even left the old one. The charges were meticulous nursery furniture, a down payment on a different house, a car for Sarah. He'd used the money I'd given him for our mortgage to make the minimum payments, keeping the scam alive until he was ready to disappear. At the closing on that new house, he'd probably told Sarah to read every line, to ask every question, to protect herself. The things you learn to do after you've destroyed someone else. Here's the fallout they don't see. I work 2 jobs now, one in marketing during the day, another at a bookstore at night, and I still can't afford a 1-bedroom in the city where I thought I'd built a life. My mother sends me articles about financial literacy like they're aspirin for a broken leg. Jenna and I talk again, but only about safe topics. Her wedding, my new cat, nothing that touches the raw places. The friends we shared post pictures of David's new baby, his perfect house, his seamless transition into the life he wanted. In the comments, they say things like, "So glad you got away from that drama and you deserve this peace." The drama is me. The peace is built on my bankruptcy. What I didn't anticipate, the consequence that keeps me up at night, is how thoroughly David erased me. He didn't just take the house. He took the narrative, the history, the very memory of us as a team. When I run into his mother at the grocery store, she looks through me like I'm glass. The lawyer who handled our closing still posts on LinkedIn about ethical business practices, and I can't report him without admitting I was complicit in my own fraud. I'm trapped in a story where I'm the villain, and the hero is the man who stole from me. The self-awareness comes in waves, usually at 3 a.m. when I'm calculating whether I can afford both groceries and gas. I see now that I wanted the house more than I wanted honesty. I wanted to be the woman who could say we and mean it, who had roots and equity and a future that looked like a magazine spread. David saw that one in me, that desperation to belong to something, and he used it like a crowbar. I wasn't just financially naive, I was emotionally bankrupt, willing to trade my autonomy for the performance of partnership. The fling with Mark wasn't about revenge or passion. It was about finally saying yes to someone who saw me, even if that someone was a predator holding a camera. This is where I am now sitting in my studio apartment with the broken stove, typing this on a laptop I can barely afford, watching David's new house gain value on Zillow. He listed his Cedar Street property for triple what he paid, using my renovation ideas in the staging photos. His listing agent praised the original character I fought to preserve, the kitchen backsplash I installed myself on a Sunday while David golfed. The comments section is full of heart eye emojis and offers above asking. My bankruptcy hearing is in 3 weeks. The timeline is almost poetic. I'm telling this story now because yesterday's mail included an invitation to David and Sarah's wedding, a heavy cardstock affair with a pressed flower, and a note in Sarah's loopy handwriting, "We'd love to have you bless our union." No hard feelings. The cruelty is so precise it feels surgical. They want me to witness their happy ending, to officiate my own humiliation. Or maybe she genuinely doesn't know, thinks I'm just an ex who caused drama, thinks David is the wounded hero who rose from the ashes. Either way, I need someone to know what really happened. That I didn't just cheat and get what I deserved. That I signed a document I should have read, trusted a man who measured me for a financial coffin, and sought comfort from another predator who saw me coming. That David sold a house that was never mine to a woman who thinks she's getting a fresh start, using money he stole from me to fund their down payment. That I'm homeless not because I'm reckless, but because I believed in a story where love meant signing on the dotted line without reading the fine print. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet to judge me, because everyone in my real life already has. Tell me I'm the villain who deserved the fallout. Tell me I'm a victim of financial abuse. Tell me I'm both, or neither, or something messier that doesn't have a name yet. Just don't tell me I got what I deserved without knowing the full cost of a signature I gave away, or how much rent you can extract from someone who thinks they're paying a mortgage on a home they own. Because the real estate records might list David as the sole owner of 147 Cedar Street, but I'm the one still paying for it, one defaulted credit card at a time.